I want to talk today about getting out of the rat race of forensic assessments. And this could probably apply to all kinds of assessment jobs that we do as psychologists, but forensics is what I know and what I can speak about personally. And really, what ended up happening for me was that I felt like a report writing factory, this like sort of machine that was crunching out pages and pages and pages of text that I was pretty sure nobody was reading. And it became pretty clear to me that the only way to move out of this machine was to stop trading my time for money. This is not a new concept. In other kinds of careers where people talk about making more kinds of passive income or scaling, these are common conversations so that you don't always have to be the one producing your own exact results. But for me, all I knew was report writing. And I only knew me as an entity to do that. And so I just wrote report after report after report. And really, it can be kind of demoralizing to just put in all that time and all that effort into an outcome that you think maybe most people are just flipping to the back page, looking at the opinion, and that at the end of the day, maybe they're going to just do what they were going to do anyway, regardless of the excellent job that you did with testing or in a differential diagnosis or whatever contribution you made. It can sometimes almost start to become like an existential question of like, does this matter? Which I think then pretty naturally and pretty quickly becomes an existential question of, can I write into the void like this for the next 10, 15, 20 years? And I don't say any of that to minimize what we do. I think there are definitely times that reports are read very thoroughly and they're very helpful in pushing the needle forward. So I'm not trying to discount that. I'm just saying that on balance, there are also reports that we write that didn't need to be written. And putting that aside, putting utility aside, because that's not the only thing that matters. So like, even if you feel good about it, even if you feel good about the job that you did, even if you feel like you're working in a particular setting where what you did matters, okay? So that's our best case scenario. Even then, there's only so many reports that you can write. At a certain point, I had gotten so efficient with some of my processes that, and efficiency, that's a whole other conversation for a whole other time. But I had gotten so efficient with some of my processes that there were only so many reports I could cram in there. There was only so much more writing I could do if I needed to make more money in a given month, or I was working towards a vacation or something like that. And some of those places of efficiency was in the process itself. So things like getting defendants to show up so that, I wasn't having some of the same dropout rates maybe that others around me had, right? And some of those strategies were like leaning on tech. So, using text and email to schedule with people. And those platforms make it easier to do things like auto reminders. And then some of it was my own time frame. Like I started early and I followed up. So, and again, I systematized that. And so I ended up just having more people show up for interview, which meant that I had more reports to write on the back end. And the problem was that there was only so much that I could do that way, both in terms of the efficiency, but also just in terms of the actual experience of working that way. Because there's only so many reports you can write at a time before confusing yourself about which defendant you're writing about, having to double check your facts and make sure you're thinking of the right person or the right data point. And because I was having to double check myself and make sure and be really thorough while I was balancing all those plates, then that compromised my efficiency. That slowed me down. And it just became very clear to me that I was hitting my upper limit on what I could produce and still feel good about the quality. And probably all of us who do report writing full-time at least have had to wrestle with some version of this, of that terrible feeling of balancing your resources with quality and trying to find that point of balance where good enough is good enough, because you'll never have all the time in the world to put every single little bit in that maybe you would have liked. And also, most of the time, the people paying us don't want us to do that anyway because it would be way too many hours. And of course, how many reports you can write will also depend on a lot of variables, like your own personality and capacity, your writing style, to some degree your thoroughness, your financial situation, your jurisdiction, the kind of evaluations you do, the expectations of those around you. All of that will create a unique set point for each of us about how much is too much and when it's okay to stop. So all those things are going to contribute to how many. But at the end of the day, we all have a number. We all have a number that, that's as many as I can do. And that's my number. And whether your limits are because of having a family or having chronic illness or just wanting to have a balanced life or just strictly not wanting to do that kind of work at that volume for 25, 30 years of your life, whatever it is, there's another way. There is another way. So for me, the first step was I had to be really honest, to really honestly evaluate whether I could take other steps of scaling or working on passive income or looking to just get out of that report writing hamster wheel. Could I do that in my current situation? That was what I had to honestly ask myself. And for me, that answer was no. For me, that answer was I have to be a little bit brave here. I have to look at what else I can do, what changes can I make in my current professional situation to buy back some more time into my life. So that, and not just time, but also kind of flexibility, right? So that I could start to do some other things. And for me, because of my personal situation, this was a long game. So other people might have other variables. There might be other things that, people are working on so they can say yeah, you know what, I'm going to make this change quickly and I can scale up quickly. But for me, it was not quick. It was a long game. And, it was what do I want to be different? How much time do I need to work it in? And what is the runway to that? And then, over and above that, are there any role conflicts with what I'm doing now that mean I can't get to where I want to be once I identified where I want to be? And that could be many things, from doing things like this to, being a consultant or doing trainings or pivoting out of psychology entirely to try to do some other things on the side that, that you like and enjoy, right? Because I was recognizing that my brain needed a break. I needed to do some other things too that were not report writing, just to get more re-energized. And so, again, for me, that first step was really that I needed to pivot into a different kind of job. Or, not a different kind of job, I was still doing the same thing, but a different job, just plain different job, different place of employment. And because of that change, I had different limits around the time demands that were placed on me, and more of an ability to plan ahead so that I could structure my time a little bit better in terms of where I knew I wanted to go. And so building Streamline, it's been a solid 2 years of working extra hours. I call it my second shift because I would get done with my real job and then put in at least a couple hours a day on this other venture. And not every day, right? Everybody needs days off, but often a couple hours a day after work, except that it didn't really feel like work because I was building something special. At least I thought it was special and creative and authentic to my true calling, I think. And that, for me, as I've really been on this journey and in this process, it's been, I've realized that it's really important to me to try to find a way to blend forensic work with creative ventures and instruction and teaching, things that I've really loved across my lifespan. And the goal, for me has been to give other people the kind of boost up that I really needed 10 years ago when I was trying to figure out how to do this work, when I was right smack in the middle of the tunnel and, I was too far in to get out and I was too far out to, to be looking at retirement and just kind of grinding it out. And so in any case, once I made the move, the employment move, it really was about putting a structured plan in place. And frankly, that plan started to go into place before I left. But in any case, for me, the movement sideways has been these trainings and these videos. This is really my passion. It's what I wanted to do. I wanted to contribute to the field in other ways. But I also wanted the ability to generate income without me having to show up to every single training. And not just for me, even though admittedly that does benefit me, but because I've always felt like win-win is the best outcome. And on-demand trainings give so much flexibility to listeners too. And so that was really the basis initially behind not wanting to do live trainings as a format, because for me, it was just replicating the same problem that there's only one me and only so many hours. I love doing live stuff too because there's a different energy there, but it was important to me that in any kind of side venture or pivot that I was trying to make, that was really a one-off and not the norm, because trading time for money was specifically what I was trying to get out of in order to have a happy and balanced life. And in a lot of ways, I needed that to be a better forensic clinician, because I didn't want to feel like I was constantly racing from one thing to another, constantly dropping balls, never really giving my full energy to any one thing because I had so many different things going on. So I really wanted to get out of that rat race. And for me, there were pivots in there. And what your pivots are, whether you even need to pivot at all to make that happen, that'll all be dictated by what makes sense for you, for your life and your personality. But for me, I realized I have other interests outside of psychology. I'm interested in computers and technology and real estate. And these are things beyond my identity as a psychologist. And at the same time, my skills and training as a psychologist can contribute and help me in all those things. And so the main point here really is just that you can get out of the rat race. You can do something different besides just writing hundreds of reports, sacrificing your time for money with your bottom in the chair in front of the computer. Or, if you're like I was, pacing and dictating reports. I was dictating so much at one point that I started to vocalize my punctuations when talking to people out in public, and that was just a really bad sign. So making dollars per minute, it doesn't have to be the only model. It's the model that's been trained into us. It's the model that's been modeled for us. But at the end of the day, you have other options. You can do things differently, but the first step is breaking out of that mindset that that's the only way to do things. So good luck with your pivots. Drop a comment or a message if you want to talk about some specifics or your particular situation and how you can get inspired to do some other things. And just know that there's a lot of us out here willing and ready to support you in whatever lights you up. Like, you want to make soap, become a beekeeper, start a clothing line. These are all possible with a little sweat equity and a willingness to think outside the box, put in a second shift for a little while, and pivot now in a direction that has you headed toward an earlier retirement and a more flexible job in the meantime. The money that you can make, the things that you can do, they're limitless. They're limitless. If we can just break out of this mindset that we have to do it just this one way. Nothing can stop you if you can take the first couple of steps in a different way of thinking through things, because all of a sudden you find yourself walking out there in this beautiful and terrifying unbeaten path, and you look around and you realize, this thing I'm building, this path I'm walking, this matters. Not that reports don't matter, they do. But I think that mattering means mattering in more than just one way. And I think that that's the entire point of any of this. That when you're walking that path, then the reports that you sit down to write, they're because you really choose to. And that makes them more inspired too. Balanced clinicians write balanced reports. And that's been the most amazing thing about all of this for me, is that for me, taking a step back has helped me take a step up in my writing too. So, all right. This is Streamline Forensics, and we train forward.